The loudest scream you'll ever hear makes no sound at all. It doesn't shatter glass. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't echo through the streets. It's silence. That quiet blade that cuts deeper than betrayal, sharper than revenge, heavier than rage. Because when someone wounds you, they wait for your collapse. They wait for fireworks, anger, pleading, explanations. Noise is the stage they know how to play on. But when you give them nothing, just calm, steady, immovable silence, you don't just break the script. You hold up a mirror they cannot run from. I once watched a man betray his closest ally in business. He expected war, lawsuits, humiliation. Instead, he got silence. And 6 months later, his empire crumbled without a sound. And here lies the paradox. Noise is a curtain. It hides the truth. Silence is a floodlight. It exposes everything. That's why silence terrifies the guilty. Not because it's empty, but because it's full. Full of the truth they spent their whole life avoiding. And this is where our journey begins. Not with shouting matches, not with revenge, but with the discipline to withhold your presence and let silence do the speaking. Tonight, I'll take you through the 8 silent laws that reshaped my life. Lessons born from betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, but transformed into clarity, peace, and strength. Because silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is the most powerful presence you'll ever carry. And so we begin with the first law. Silence isn't absence, it's presence withheld. They say silence is weakness, but silence isn't absence, it's presence withheld. And when you master that presence, you realize silence isn't empty, it's full of truth, of power, of clarity that noise can never touch. I still remember the boardroom, glass walls reflecting every anxious face. We had chased this deal for months. It was supposed to be the turning point. I had trusted him, called him a brother. And then I watched him slide the contract across the table. Not to me, to the client. My name was gone, erased in ink. The room froze, the air thickened, every eye turned to me, waiting. My insides were on fire. Rage pounded against my ribs like fists on a locked door. I imagined flipping the table, shouting until the glass cracked. But then I felt it. Noise was the script he had written for me. If I exploded, he would win twice. First the contract, then the narrative. My anger would become his shield. So I did the unthinkable. I closed my laptop. I stacked the papers, one by one. Then I looked at him, not with fury, not with tears, just steady. "You didn't win a deal today," I said softly. "You just signed your karma." His smile faltered. The pen in his hand stopped mid-tap. He had prepared for war. He had no defense against stillness. I walked out, the echo of my footsteps louder than any speech I could have given. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't expected: freedom. 6 months later, the client left him. The company began to rot from the inside. And me? I was already building again. Not with rage, with clarity. Why did silence cut deeper than rage? Because noise is the weapon of the insecure. It's the curtain they hide behind. But silence is the floodlight. It exposes what they hoped would stay hidden. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is presence, without the need for explanation. Think about it. In arguments, who rushes to shout the loudest? the one who fears the truth. Noise is their armor. But silence is proof you don't need armor. You are already untouchable. Silence saves you that energy. It keeps you sharp for what matters. Because while they are drowning in noise, you are conserving strength. And strength, when silent, grows. Silence is also a test. It reveals character, yours and theirs. Silence isn't absence. It's the loudest presence in the room. Noise demands attention. Silence commands it. And let's be honest, I used to believe the loudest voice wins. I wasted nights crafting imaginary comebacks, Oscar-worthy monologues delivered only to my bathroom mirror. Guess what? Not a single one ever changed reality. The only thing it changed was my sleep schedule. Sometimes the most powerful move is to shut the laptop and go to bed. So here's your practice. Next time someone tries to drag you into chaos, pause, count 3, feel the urge to react. Then ask yourself, am I reacting to heal or just to prove? If it's just to prove, don't. Let your silence expand. Let them sit with their own noise. And reflect. When was the last time your silence echoed louder than your words? Write it down. Remember it. Because once you experience it, you'll never forget. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The second law, the mirror they cannot escape. They say silence closes doors, but silence does more than close. It reflects. It leaves the other person alone in a room full of echoes, staring at their own words bouncing back at them. I was young then, still naive about love. She was radiant, magnetic, the kind of woman who could light up a room. But every argument ended the same way, me apologizing for things I hadn't done. If she felt insecure, I had to carry it. If she felt jealous, I had to explain myself until midnight. And if she twisted my words, it was me untangling them, desperate to prove I cared. One evening, it came to a breaking point. After an hour of circular blame, she leaned in and said the line I'll never forget. If you really cared, you'd prove it right now. I froze. That was the script, the trap. She wanted my defense, my chase, my desperate vow. But for the first time, I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't plead. I walked away. Days passed. Then weeks. She expected the old pattern. Angry calls, midnight texts, me knocking on her door with roses and apologies. But this time, nothing. Just silence. One night, at 2 a.m., my phone lit up. The room was dark, the hum of the fridge louder than her trembling words on the screen. Your silence hurts more than your anger ever could. She didn't realize. It wasn't my silence hurting her. It was her own manipulation, echoing back without my voice to soften it. That's the curse of silence. It doesn't erase you. It amplifies them. Every sharp word, every twisted moment now played back on loop. And I was no longer in the scene. That's why silence is terrifying. It turns their noise into their mirror. And some people can't stand what they see. Here's the irony. People always expect you to react the way they would. If betrayed, they would collapse, so they wait for you to collapse too. But when you don't, when you stay calm, steady, unmoved, their illusion shatters like glass. And let me be honest, I used to think instant replies proved I was caring. I thought answering at 2 a.m. meant I was loyal. In reality, it just meant I was available for chaos on demand. Funny thing is, sometimes the strongest love language isn't words. It's not showing up for the performance at all. Silence doesn't punish, it reveals. Sometimes the sharpest reply is an unopened message. So here's your practice. The next time someone twists your story, resist the urge to explain. Don't rush to defend. Let silence stretch. At first, it will feel like holding your breath underwater, but soon you'll realize the panic isn't yours, it's theirs. And reflect. Have you ever noticed how silence not only protected you, but also exposed them? Because silence isn't emptiness. Silence is a mirror. And when held steady, mirrors always tell the truth. If this resonated, type clarity in the comments. Not for me, for you, as a reminder that you don't need noise to prove your worth. The third law, the strategy of stillness. They say stillness is doing nothing. They're wrong. Stillness is the most deliberate move you'll ever make. I remember a meeting, air-heavy, a colleague, sharp-tongued and envious, turned the entire room into his stage. He hurled accusations, each one sharper than the last, painting me as the reason a project had stalled. His voice rose, rehearsed and loud, each sentence meant to corner me. For a moment, I felt the urge rise. I wanted to defend myself, to prove him wrong. But instead, I breathed. I leaned back in my chair. I stirred the spoon in my coffee. Clink, clink, the sound absurdly calm against his frenzy, and then I saw it. His face flushed. His hand gripped the table too tightly. My calm became a mirror to his chaos. He had prepared for my fight, but he had no script for my silence. By the end of the meeting, no one remembered his accusations. They remembered the contrast. His storm against my stillness, and in the whispers that followed, I heard it. He didn't say a word, but he won. That's the strategy of stillness. Ours is their weapon, but stillness is the mirror that shows everyone in the room who's truly in control. Think about it. Anyone can shout, flail, and waste oxygen, but it takes discipline to sit in calm while the storm spins itself out. That discipline is magnetic. It draws respect, even from those who never wanted to give it. And here's the irony. He wasted an hour of oxygen while I barely finished my coffee. And honestly, that coffee wasn't even good. Sometimes the cheapest drink in the room becomes the most expensive lesson for someone else. Stillness isn't weakness. It's a blade so sharp that it never needs to be swung. So here's your practice. The next time someone corners you in public, don't rush to defend. Sit back. Breathe. Keep your gaze steady. Let them drain themselves dry while you remain unmoved. And reflect. When was the last time your calm revealed someone else's chaos? Because stillness isn't just absence of movement. It's presence that shifts the entire room. The fourth law. Boundaries without words. They say love means always being there. They're wrong. Sometimes the greatest act of love is stepping back, silently. Alia was my cousin, almost a sister. We grew up together, whispering childhood secrets. But adulthood changed things. What was once closeness turned into chains. She leaned on me for money, for jobs, for decisions she never dared to make herself. And I carried it all, convincing myself sacrifice was loyalty. Until one night, I sat at my workbench. The dim lamp glowed over stacks of wood, the faint scent of pine clinging to the air. My phone buzzed again and again. Her name lit the screen. My chest tightened. In that moment, I saw the truth. It wasn't love anymore. It was dependency. and I was drowning in it. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply turned the phone face down on the wood. The buzzing stopped. The silence stayed. That silence became the boundary I should have drawn years ago. At first, she raged. Then she pleaded. Then came her silence. And in that silence, something shifted. With no one left to carry her weight, she began to carry herself. It didn't happen overnight. But years later, I heard she had started her own business, paid her debts, even mentored young women in her community. The same Alia who once called me for every crisis now stood on her own feet, and part of me smiled, because I knew my silence had been the first seed of her strength. That's the paradox of boundaries. People think saying no will break relationships. But silence doesn't always sever ties. Sometimes it saves them by forcing growth where comfort once kept people small. And let's laugh at it now. Back then, I thought being family meant being her 24/7 emergency hotline. In truth, I wasn't helping her stand. I was training her to crawl. The day I stopped picking up was the day she learned to walk. Silence is the boundary no guilt can unlock. Here's your practice. Find one place where you've been overgiving. Don't announce your boundary. Live it. If a message comes in, wait before answering. If a request feels heavy, let it pass unanswered. Silence will speak what words never can. And reflect. Whose growth have you been carrying for too long? Because when silence draws the line, it isn't cruelty. It's freedom. For them and for you. The fifth law, the collapse of projection. They say what people say about you defines you. They're wrong. Most of the time, their words are just confessions of their own fears painted onto your skin. I had a friend who loved to play the leader. In every circle, he cast himself as the center and me as the shadow. At dinners, at cafes, he'd make the same joke. Without us, you'd be nothing. Laughter followed, but not all of it was genuine. I could see the unease in some faces. I wasn't the only one. Others were mocked too. They stayed quiet, afraid of being alone. One evening, at a crowded cafe, he made the joke again. Steam hissed from the espresso machine, the smell of roasted beans filling the air. I set my cup down gently, and in that moment, I made my choice. I wouldn't explain. I wouldn't defend. I would simply leave. At first, he tried to turn me into the punchline, even in my absence. But something shifted. The others, those who had also been quiet targets, began to step back too. My silence gave them permission to act. The circle shrank, then collapsed. What he thought he controlled had never belonged to him. It had only held together because we endured it. Once silence broke that endurance, the illusion fell apart. That's projection. When someone calls you weak, it doesn't reveal you. It reveals what they fear in themselves. Their insults aren't your mirror. They're their own confession. And here's the irony. The moment I chose coffee alone over a table full of fake laughter, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. That quiet corner, with nothing but the hum of background music, became a sanctuary. And unexpectedly, I began to meet others who also valued depth over noise. From those quiet mornings, new friendships grew, genuine, lasting, unshaken by cheap jokes. Let's be honest, looking back, it's almost funny. The self-proclaimed leader wasn't really tall. He was just standing on a chair. Impressive, until you noticed the chair. My silence was simply pulling the chair away. When someone mocks you, they're not describing you. They're describing the shadow they run from. Here's your practice. The next time someone tries to cast their fear onto you, pause. Don't fight the shadow. Step into the light. Truth will reveal itself without your struggle. And reflect. Whose words are you still carrying that never belonged to you? Because the moment you put them down, you'll see clearly. You were never the shadow. You were the light they couldn't face. The sixth law, detachment, the silent armor. They say detachment means you don't care. They're wrong. Detachment doesn't kill love. It protects it. It's learning to carry your peace like armor no one can pierce. I had a friend once who lived in constant drama. Every week, a new crisis, a betrayal, a heartbreak, a disaster only I could fix. At first, I answered every late-night call. I offered advice, skipped my own rest, poured out my energy trying to calm his storms. But the more I gave, the emptier I felt. His fire didn't shrink. It grew, feeding on me. One night, the phone buzzed again. His name lit up the screen. My hand hovered, my chest tight. For years, my reflex was always the same. Pick up, absorb, solve. But this time, I set the phone down on the wooden table. I stepped outside. The night air wrapped around me like a blanket. The moon hung still over the trees. Crickets filled the silence where his voice used to be. And in that moment, I realized his chaos wasn't mine to carry. My silence wasn't abandonment. It was detachment. It was freedom. That's the power of silent armor. People don't always mean to drain you. My friend wasn't born toxic. He truly didn't know. The truth is, I had trained him. By always answering, I had made him believe I would carry his storms forever. He thought it was care. He had no idea how much it cost me. And here's the hard part. I had confused loyalty with sacrifice. I thought real friendship meant showing up every time, no matter the toll. But that was my mistake. Detachment isn't betrayal. It's correction. It's saying, your battles are yours, and mine are mine. Detachment isn't coldness. It's warmth that refuses to burn itself out. And let's be honest, I used to think answering every call made me a good friend. In reality, all I did was become the night shift customer service he never paid for. The moment I stopped, I slept 8 hours straight for the first time in years. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ignore a text. Here's your practice. Tonight, if a message arrives dripping with drama, don't rush to answer. Breathe. Let it sit. Step outside. Look at the sky. Listen to the silence. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop bleeding for battles that aren't yours. And reflect. What chaos are you still carrying that doesn't belong to you? Imagine setting it down. Imagine walking lighter. That's detachment. Not coldness, not cruelty, but armor. The kind that lets you stand in storms without getting wet. If this struck you, type armor in the comments. Not for me, for you. A reminder that your peace is worth protecting. The seventh law, closure is not given, it's chosen. They say closure comes when the other person explains. They're wrong. Closure isn't given, it's chosen. When my business collapsed, Mara left too, but not without a trace. On my desk, she left a handwritten note. Just one sentence. Some roads can't be walked twice. I must have read those words until the ink felt carved into my skin. What did she mean? That we were finished forever? That I had failed her? I carried that line like a stone in my chest, heavier each day. For months, I tortured myself with questions. I searched for hidden meanings, replayed every moment, as if the right memory could unlock her silence. But some puzzles aren't meant to be solved. One night, in the stillness of an empty apartment, I finally whispered to myself, "It's over, and that's enough." And in that whisper came freedom. Mara's silence wasn't punishment. It was permission. Permission to stop chasing answers. Permission to step forward without them. Maybe she wasn't the woman meant to walk with me anymore. Maybe her closed door was the doorway I needed to step through alone. Not long after, life tested me again. A health scare put me in a hospital bed. And that's where I met Elena, a nurse with calm eyes and steady hands. Her presence was quiet, but her care spoke louder than 1,000 explanations. The first time she adjusted the IV drip, I noticed how her hands didn't shake. It was as if peace itself had chosen to stand beside me. That's the paradox. Sometimes the silence you curse becomes the doorway to the love you were meant to find. Mara's note was a locked door. Elena's hand on the IV was the window I never saw before. Closure isn't the note they leave. It's the choice you make when you stop rereading it. And let's be honest, I used to think closure came with dramatic reunions, final conversations, maybe even a movie-style monologue in the rain. Turns out, life isn't a movie. No violins, no grand finale. Just a quiet room, a note, and the decision to put it down. Sometimes healing looks boring from the outside, but it feels like a revolution inside. Here's your practice. If you're still rereading someone's last words, stop asking what they meant. Decide what you choose them to mean. Choose that it's finished. Choose that you're free. And reflect. Whose silence are you still waiting on? What if today you gave yourself the closure they never could? Eighth law, the Stoic principle of indifference. They say indifference means you've stopped caring. They're wrong. True indifference isn't apathy, it's strength. It's choosing that your peace will never again be hostage to someone else's chaos. After Mara left, after the company collapsed, I still carried the weight of other people's opinions. Some mocked me behind closed doors. Some whispered I'd never rise again. And at first, their words burned. Every rumor felt like a wound I couldn't defend. Then one morning, I walked past two men in a cafe. They didn't notice me. One leaned in and said, "He's finished." The other laughed. Their words landed like sparks. But for the first time, I didn't flinch. I stirred my coffee, let the spoon ring against the glass, and watched the sound drown their voices. That was the moment I discovered indifference is louder than defense. Because here's the truth. Your enemies expect rage, rebuttal, or at least proof they still matter to you. But indifference? Indifference starves them. It tells them, you no longer exist in my inner world, and that silence burns more than any insult. The best revenge isn't rage. It's refusing to play the game at all. And let me laugh at myself here. I used to waste hours drafting the perfect comebacks in my head, Oscar-winning monologues to an audience that didn't even care. You know what those speeches won me? Nothing, except less sleep. The day I stopped rehearsing anger was the day I started rehearsing peace. That's Stoic indifference. Not chasing to be seen, not begging to be understood, but rising so far above the noise that the noise itself fades into background static. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the best revenge is to be unlike him who did the injury. Here's your practice. The next time someone mocks you, resist the urge to explain. pause. Smile if you must. Let silence do the heavy lifting. Ask yourself, does this deserve my breath? Because most battles are invitations to noise, and you don't have to attend every war you're invited to. And reflect. Whose voice still echoes in your head? What if you treated it like cafe chatter? There, but irrelevant. Because indifference isn't weakness. It's mastery. The art of building a life so full, so grounded, that the noise of others dissolves into nothing. Let silence do the speaking. So here we are. 8 lessons, one thread woven through them all. Silence. Not the silence of weakness, not the silence of defeat, but the silence that transforms. Think back, the boardroom where I shut the laptop instead of shouting. The love that ended with a line scribbled on paper. The friendships I walked away from, not with noise, but with stillness. Again and again, I learned the same truth. It's not revenge that heals. It's not explanation that frees. It's silence, the mirror, the armor, the teacher. And if you've been walking your own road of betrayal, heartbreak, or endless drama, I want you to know this. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to beg to be seen. Your quiet strength is louder than their chaos. Maybe right now, you're carrying words that cut you. Maybe you're replaying scenes that never found an ending. But here's your reminder. Closure isn't waiting out there. It's rising in here. Your silence is not emptiness. It's space. Space where peace grows. Space where new love, new friendships, new life can take root. Because at the end of it all, silence does what noise never can. It reveals truth. It starves manipulation. It feeds self-mastery. And one day those who hurt you will hear it echo, not in your voice, but in their own conscience. So walk on, quietly, powerfully. Don't look back. Don't explain. Don't wait. The loudest answer you'll ever give is the life you build in peace. And now I'll ask you, when was the moment your silence became your turning point? Share it. Your story may be the seed of someone else's freedom. If this spoke to you, subscribe to join me for more journeys into Stoic strength and quiet power. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded. Silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's healing. It's justice. Stay grounded. Stay untouchable. And let silence do the speaking.